Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am joined again by David Richardson, our Deputy Chairman. So we're in for a good hour of discussion together. Do fire your comments in. Let me get the comments up on my screen as well. So looking forward to hearing from you, and we've got lots to discuss as ever. So welcome, David.
Very good evening to you, Richard. Fresh from your trip to Aberdeen.
Yes, we'll talk about that in a minute. An eventful
I'm intrigued.
Trip.
Obviously, yeah. I was at the one in Glasgow, and we had a couple of eggs thrown, and there was a little bit of vocal argy bargy, but Aberdeen, gee whiz, let's not say any more. Let's not say any more.
We'll talk. That's item number 2. Well, a few more people will tune in before we talk about that, but yeah, we'll talk about our adventures in Aberdeen. And we can see your new house there, David. When David came on, it made me think, hang on, what's going on? Is he in a different room? Then David reminded me, is moved house. So,
yes, moved house, not the same book-laden background, which everyone's perhaps familiar with. No, I'm actually in the kitchen. So yes, very pleased to be in our new residence. And yes, we're very happy with the move. We're a bit stressful, but we've made it. We've made it.
Yeah, movement's a big job, isn't it? It doesn't matter what furniture you've got, it doesn't fit in the new house. Well, have you found that you've got a few things that you just don't know where they go?
Well, thankfully, we're this is a bigger property than the previous one, and we've got a bigger garage. So, but we still had to hire a skip. Embarrassingly, we had a skip for the amount of rubbish that we had accumulated over the years. We're about nearly 10 years in our previous address. So yeah, so we've learned some quite harsh lessons that we're hopefully not going to repeat in the future. Hopefully not.
I heard something once years and years ago. It was on Radio 4, I think, and they were interviewing some removal people. Their job was working for a removal company, and they said the worst people to move are church ministers. Never do a job for a church minister. And do you know why?
No. Well, I'm going to guess books. I'm going to guess yes.
They said you've got boxes and boxes of books, and they weigh an absolute ton.
Yeah, well, that was my job for the few weeks beforehand, was to, and then we had we managed to overlap the two houses for a week. So we had a week to get everything moved over and a week to get the other property sorted out as well. And the books was terrible. But yes, I can only plead guilty to that accusation.
Living up to the stereotype. Right, well, let's have a look at our first story. Greetings, people who are just saying hello there. Welcome.
Yes.
I was saying to David before we started, this is almost a standing item on the agenda for the live stream.
Yes.
I thought I'd include this one because it is so dramatic. I mean, this is one of the most striking we've seen. Class war, terrified teachers call for self-defense lessons amid a rising tide of violence in Scotland schools. I mean, how more extreme a headline could you get from that? I mean, it's difficult to imagine.
Yes, teachers actually asking for lessons to defend themselves, and if you bury into the article, which carries on page 6, as I have done, there does seem to be a little bit there's obviously a freedom of information request gone out there, but a lot of the councils are coming back and saying, we don't keep that that information, but you just feel as if they're prevaricating a bit, and there is a shocking. I mean, Richard, my feelings on education. If you can do it, homeschool your child, because what's going out there is carnage. I'm happy for folk to disagree with that, but I keep reading these headlines, like you say, they keep reoccurring, and there's some real shocking stuff, and that I have a little bit of personal knowledge to this. I'm afraid schools have been led by the government to go down the softly approach. Children aren't bad. They're intrinsically good. They just got some rough edges when it's a complete opposite, I'm afraid. Yes, we do need to get tough in schools, because at the moment I don't know how teachers do it. Take my hat off to you.
Yeah,
you must.
It's a mixed picture. Some schools are worse than others. Some classes are worse than others. Maybe some teachers are targeted more than others, but the overall picture is truly, truly shocking. The thing that I was reminded of today, I was reading a book that it wasn't actually published, but it was a manuscript for a book about smacking and smacking bans.
All right.
It just makes me think about the smacking bans. So that's 5 years ago now, but the discussion about it would go back about 8 years. And I would say that that's just one part of the move away from, discipline, punishing children. So it's a shift in the balance of power. So taking powers away from parents and empowering children. And I think that's a significant step along the way to what we've got now. So they make it so that parents can't give their child a smack when they've been naughty. And we're now in the situation where the children give the teacher a smack when they feel like it.
Yeah.
And as far as the Scottish educational and political establishment are concerned, if the parents give the child a smack, that is absolutely a pull. They've got to avoid that at all costs. Lock them up, lock up those parents. But if a child gives a teacher a smack, well, okay, we can try and restore the relationship. We can try and get some more teaching. That's not such a crisis. Really, they're not so bothered about that. That's just they're not bothered about it, partly for the teachers, but also for the children. They're being miseducated. They're being taught that you can act in this sort of way, and it's sort of okay. Nothing will happen. So it's miseducation. Yes. So children going to school and being taught the opposite of, so it's detracting from their character development. It's not adding to their character development. It's detracting from it, and it's a sorry state of affairs. So,
I tell you what,
sorry, go on.
Take my hat off to anyone who's doing that, is involved in that particular vocation, and I can imagine the hat that you're having to wear as a teacher is a tin hat to protect you from whatever's coming your way. But obviously, it's very personal to you as well, Richard, because that was your job at one time, wasn't it? Your career.
Yeah. I mean, my feeling with teaching, I just can't handle it when you've got children who are being disobedient. Okay, kids are going to be naughty and whatever. Fine. You've got to deal with them. They're not going to be little angels. But when it gets to the stage where I felt unable to enforce high standards, adequate standards, the stage where I think this is not for me. This is not for me. It's not just it's another context as well, not just school contexts. It's got to be good standards. The children are learning, cooperating, etc. Otherwise, I'll leave it for someone else.
Yes.
And reform, we're coming on to reform big time later on. Stay tuned.
We certainly are.
Stay tuned.
What is happening? What is happening?
We'll get there. We'll get there. But let's go to Aberdeen.
Oh, this is what I've been waiting for.
So, we've done these lights in Edinburgh and then in Glasgow. David, you were at both of those. What was your take on those? Did you?
Very well. Edinburgh, in particular, very moving. I was impressed, and now the lights. Richard had promised me we will bring these lights to your church, David, the following week. And when I seen the emotion that they generated, the thoughtfulness that they affected folk with outside the Scottish Parliament, I thought, yes, I'm really looking forward. And I'll tell you, it was equally moving. I know you were unwell that day, Richard. You were very unwell that day, so you didn't make it across to Vision Church. But we had Neil and Andrew Brady, it was excellent. And then of course George Square. Wow, again it was memorable. Little bit of opposition, but put all three of those together, and I think Aberdeen. Wow. So talk me through it, Richard. What on earth?
Yeah, just to fill in the details, the pictures don't show how many people were there.
Right.
So when we did this in Edinburgh at the Parliament, it was Saturday night, freezing cold. I think we're about 35 people. We did in Glasgow, I think we were about 40 people. In Aberdeen, there was about 20 of us. But in Aberdeen, there were just some people just consumed with blind fury.
Really?
When they were aware of what we're doing. I mean, what we were doing, I mean, part of it was like silent reflection, and then others, it was just people giving speeches, a few placards around. I mean, there weren't many people around, but it gathered people. So there was a handful of young girls maybe around, I don't know, late teens, maybe that sort of age. I say were absolutely besides themselves with rage, unable to control themselves. Then we had a boy come with this speaker system blasting away, and he came and stood right next to the person speaking. Very, very provocative. I mean, our PA system was much more powerful, so it was sort of okay. Someone came up in a car, had the stereo blaring, various people like just hurling abuse from various directions.
Sorry, Richard, you say it came in a car? I mean, is that not a pedestrianised bit there?
Not particularly at this time of night. It's a bit of a grey area.
Yeah,
you can't drive around it.
All right.
Then a young lady came and picked up the black placard at the front and tried to walk away with it.
Yeah.
So one of our people just sort of went after her and reached to get it. And I think she tried to, I don't know, contort her body to hide it, whatever. Anyway, she ended up tripping over herself as she fell over there. So I went over while she was on the ground. I sort of snatched the placard from her. We put it back. Then she got up and claimed she'd been assaulted. So she claimed she'd been assaulted. But before then, the person who'd gone over to try and get the placard back, her and another girl were very aggressive towards him, physically aggressive, pushing, very provocative. But then the girl who fell over, she called the police. The police came later on.
Oh, wow.
They looked at it on CCTV footage, and they said, that they could see what had happened. So they took names and statements, but they said, the person who's looked at the CCTV, we don't think there's anything to actually deal with it. But an interesting thing was some of these people who were, I say, absolutely berserk and raging, by the end of it, they were standing having reasonable, calm conversations.
Wow, were they?
People. Huh? It was very particularly John William Noble from Grace Baptist Church in Aberdeen. He spoke at the end. One or two of the people, he was having a long conversation with them. Really? So I think in the end it turned more into that.
Good speaker. What do you think, John William Noble?
Yeah,
very good speaker.
Yeah, very powerful.
Very good. Along the Arthur O'Malley type character. Forthright. Very forthright. Yes.
But then this has been reported in the National. I've been in touch with another couple of journalists today.
I just picked up on that.
So the National trying to play it as a two brave girls stood up to this. But then Gillian Mackay, architect of the buffer zone legislation, weighed in. She always calls it my law because this is within the buffer zone. It's not outside the clinic, but it is in the buffer zone. But the clinic's not open. So you can't. The crime is influencing someone who is in the buffer zone for the purpose of accessing abortion services, roughly speaking.
Yes.
So no one can claim that they were in the buffer zone for the purposes of accessing abortion facilities when the place is closed.
Yeah.
But the National tried to run the story as Scottish family parties breaking the law. And then Gillian Mackay, MSP, has said that she's spoken to the police about it. In other words, trying to imply that she thinks, she doesn't understand her own law. No. In any case, we've established that already. So she's tried to make noises as though the police are on the case. She said this is a new low for the Scottish Family Party. So laying out lights to memorialise the lives lost to abortion and having a few speeches, this is a new low for us. I'm going to make a video about it tomorrow in more detail, but really, we're not going to be able to do this. But I would have been very seriously considering, let's try and do this again in Aberdeen very soon.
Yeah.
We can't do it this coming Saturday. It's a long way to go with the lights, but I think it would be fruitful to keep doing these things.
Yeah.
So it becomes an established routine. And I think maybe people coming along to participate would increase. And maybe some other attention might increase as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was the story. I do think, though, the lights laid out like that and the time of reflection in particular, I think it's very powerful for people who are there and for people who come. Oh, one last thing to mention with the placard. Sometimes with events, you can have a policy where, okay, if someone comes and tries to snatch your placard, you just let them go rather than end up with like a tug of war or who knows what's going to happen. On this occasion, though, we've got a lot of equipment there. We've got all the lights. And I think if we'd let someone walk away with one thing, I mean, would we have ended up with nothing left there?
Yeah.
Within 10 minutes. So I think it was necessary to
stand your ground
to get that back. So
yes. Did you switch the lights off towards the end to kind of symbolize the snatching of these unborn lives?
We didn't do that.
No.
We did that the others. It's very at the church, didn't you? It's very effective.
Yeah, did it at the church. We did it at Edinburgh outside the Parliament, and that silence as the lights were switched off was very poignant, very powerful indeed. Excellent.
Yeah,
superb, just wonderful. Did our friend Ewan make it there? Did he?
Yes.
That's his backyard, isn't it? Excellent. Our
I
new
think
treasurer.
With the lights now, we're maybe getting towards the end of the season because it's getting lighter, but there is the opportunity for another one or two. We'll see. We'll see. But so far, so good. Right, let's move on.
Yes.
A video coming on that tomorrow with the full story.
Story. Look forward to that.
Right, so David's been scouring the papers.
Yes.
What have we got here?
Daily Telegraph today. FM, as in First Minister. I wonder if that acronym could, perhaps we could ask for people to suggest what FM could stand for alternatively. But it must be risky. It must be decent. It must be broadcastable. But maybe a better one. But First Minister must lay down law on single-sex spaces. John Swinney here must clarify things. The Scottish Tory leader Russell Finlay is pleading for this because the confusion out there is enormous. It's absolutely enormous. And Swinney's current position, I'll give it to you. He recently backed the right of male-bodied transgender Scottish government employees who self-identify as women to use female toilets and changing rooms. And of course, this is spilling over into the NHS and the Sandy Peggy case that's going on. I think that's just been adjourned. The countless hundreds of thousands of pounds there. And Mr. Swinney said he supported Scottish Government's guidance for his trans employees, which states they, quote, should choose to use the facilities. Now, this is it. This is the key. They feel most comfortable with. So never mind how anyone else feels. Never mind how everyone else feels. And they've felt about this subject for a very, very long time. All that's been trumped. All that is no longer count. It doesn't count for anything. It's all about the distinct, the tiny minorities and how they feel. So that's what this article's about. Any thoughts, Richard?
I think it's interesting because we've got the situation where John Swinney is obviously on the wrong side of the argument. Kate Forbes is on the right side of the argument. She's been quite explicit about that. The Scottish Conservatives are on the right side of the argument.
Yes.
The thing that frustrates me, though, is the whole transgender issue seems to have shrunk down to this particular narrow aspect of it, about single-sex spaces. I mean, to my mind, I think it's a very, very important issue, single-sex spaces, very important. But I don't think it's as big an issue as confusing and corrupting generations of children by teaching them transgender ideology at school. I think that's a far more serious issue. And that one doesn't really get the attention. So as if the agenda's been set by the feminist sort of anti-trans types.
Mm-hmm.
What they say is regarded as setting the agenda and acceptable opinion. But I think that in some cases, the more serious concerns are sort of fallen off the political agenda. With all these things, I just come back to repeal the Gender Recognition Act.
Yeah, 2004. Yeah.
No reference, no accommodation of the idea of changing gender or sex anywhere within anything remotely to do with the government or in the law. And then we're heading in the right direction. But the other thing with this has been in the news recently has been puberty blockers.
Yeah.
Because the Cass review, which I think was overly celebrated by people on our side, if you like, people tend to think, oh, the Cass review, that's fantastic. That's sorted out all this transgender ideology. That this is great. That this is putting them back in their box. No, it didn't. It didn't at all. The Cass review was still written on the assumption that there's such a thing as being transgender. There's such a thing as changing sex or changing gender. It was just looking at how should this be done? What's the right procedure? So, and one of the things they said was puberty blockers should only be prescribed as part of a trial. In other words, an experiment. So when we bricked up the Sandyford Clinic, metaphorically, symbolically, we had a placard that said, "Stop experimenting on children." Puberty blockers were being given out without proper evidence. And so we were like calling it an experiment. And then the Cass review came along and said, no, it needs to be a proper experiment with someone recording the data. It's still an experiment, and it's still an experiment based on the ideology of transgenderism. So I think some people have been a bit too optimistic recently and thinking, oh, this is on the run. We've turned the corner. Trump's in the White House. We've had the Cass review. It's all sorted. I don't think so. I think there's a long way to go.
Certainly it seems to be the case for sure.
Yes. Now I think we're heading for our big topic next. Some people have been asking about this already.
Wow.
Reform shenanigans. Now I think we will try to refrain from gloating and celebrating about the problems of a rival party, even though obviously in politics that's the nature of the game. If your rivals have problems, and then it's good for you. So I'm pleased that Reform's having problems. Absolutely. I don't want to be what's the word, too gleeful about it, but it's good news for us. I don't think it's that big a deal. I think in a few weeks this might have settled down a little bit. But what's your take?
I'm not entirely sure about that, but it's the shenanigans here that it's referring to. Of course, is Rupert Lowe, and the story's still emerging, isn't it? That he has threatened someone, and now the police are involved. I mean, this is what I don't understand is right. I hope you forgive me. I'm just thinking out loud here. If Phil, let's say Phil Holden, the deputy leader of the Scottish Family Party, if Phil and I fell out, which is obviously hypothetical, but if we did, and let's say some words, some threatening words were used, I don't think you would just immediately phone the police. I think you'd say, come on lads, let's sort this out, let's be grown up, let's calm down, but there seems to be something that's been going on underneath the surface that then this little match has been struck, and then kaboom, with the police have been called, and Rupert Lowe is in this incredible situation where he's having to resign, and it's just all turning so nasty. And of course he's one of the 5 MPs that Reform had, and it would all be quite laughable if Reform were the Reform of several years ago. But of course Reform have been hitting the heights in the opinion polls of leading Labour and the Tories. So this is very significant indeed. Very significant. Give me your feelings.
We said, like, imagine that a couple of senior people in the family party fell out and one threatened the other. First thing I'd say, as I would regard that as utterly unthinkable.
Yeah,
I know the
well,
people.
it is.
If you think about the Scottish Family Party leadership team, is it 7 people? 7 people? I mean, the possibility that one of those people could utter some threat of violence against another
is so far-fetched and preposterous.
Beyond comprehension. There's just no way that would happen. But when I was in UKIP for a few years, so I knew a lot of people, and some of those people are now involved in the Reform Party. And I can say that not everyone, I'm not saying this for all of them, but a significant number of those people, the way they spoke was about you. I'd just punch him. He needs a good smack in the face. They all need rounding up and shooting. That place needs a bomb dropping on it.
Really?
That's the sort of conversation. Now, if you've got a culture or characters who speak like that,
and
then when a story like this comes out from that group, people of that ilk, if you like, then I think, well, that's believable. I'm not saying it's true in this case, but it's believable. It's believable. I was thinking this about Reform in general. The way they speak about their opponents, they're really mocking. Personal attacks. So Lee Anderson, for example, he'll get a Reform gathering laughing by being really unpleasant personal attacks against rivals. And I think, okay, you get your laugh, and some people might like that. But the downside is you're setting the culture for your party. And if the culture within your party is that you launch vicious personal attacks at people, then you're going to pay the price. It's not going to be a harmonious organization.
No,
I think that's
this article.
That's comes out.
Yeah, this article actually mentions in the third paragraph there. It talks about the studios of GB News littered with people. This is referring to Farage, that Farage has fell out with and then exiled. The Hamiltons having erected a Red Cross tent in the Green Room, which I thought was quite funny. The TV
that was again back to my UKIP days.
Yes.
And I've never met Nigel Farage, but I know people who know him, and people were very much aware of what was going on at the centre of UKIP. And the assumption was that loyalty to Farage is the currency, not particularly ability or bringing a different perspective, but loyalty. And then you'd have fallouts quite a lot. But Nigel Farage is such a dominant character that generally other people didn't reach a level where it really mattered if they went off, if they left and went their own way. I think this time it's been slightly different because Rupert Lowe, quite quickly actually, has become more of a public figure, more of his profile. So they were Nigel Farage. I think that's a concern. Like if he were to be the Prime Minister, would he be able to lead a government? I think there are indications that it could be a bit chaotic.
Indications. I mean, what's the average? Is it about 330, 350 MPs? You've got to juggle with, and if you want a decent majority in Parliament, he's got 4 MPs plus himself, and this is what's happening. Only a matter of months. I mean, there's another line in this I found quite interesting. Insiders are worried that Farage's refusal to share one tiny shard of the limelight holds his party back from becoming truly parliamentarian. And this is perhaps the root of the matter. There's a sense here that Farage, it's the cult of personality, and it's all riding on him. And
I think that's true.
If he set this agenda of confrontation, of constant, trying to belittle people if they get in his road, then folk copy that. You've got a pot that's the top of the pot is going to eventually blow off, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah. I think Farage thinks he's the superstar because he is, because he is remarkably talented, and he does things that the others can't do, and a lot of it does ride on him. So this is just not like coming from nowhere. But sometimes he'll talk, for years, for leaving the EU, for years I was the lone voice on the issue. Were you? That's probably news to the tens of thousands of members of your party and the hordes of people, activists, the other people alongside you, working. But he'll talk about it, as if it was the lone voice. He still talks that way sometimes, which I think is which is unfortunate. I mean, I think think about the UKIP days. I think when Nigel Farage was riding high with UKIP, I think there were more prominent figures around him than there are now. I mean, I could still reel off the names of a significant number of them. Maybe it's because they were MEPs, spokespeople in different areas. But now it seems to have really narrowed quite dramatically. I've also Rupert Lowe. I think his popularity is partly through being more right-wing than Nigel Farage. I think Rupert Lowe says a lot of things that reflect what reform supporters actually think, rather than Nigel Farage's slightly watered-down version. Because Nigel Farage's view is more to increase support and get elected, whereas Rupert Lowe has been more speaking what the reform base want to hear. And I've said this, I've been saying this for months, that reform is vulnerable on its right wing. There are a lot of people, including a lot of people in reform, whose views are significantly more right wing than reform, and they're vulnerable. So I don't know if Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib is another reform refugee who seems quite bitter, to be honest, about it. If they started a new party or joined an existing one, I think reform could have a significant thorn in its side there. I mean, I feel Elon Musk seems to be quite a fan of Rupert Lowe.
Yes.
He decided to get behind him somehow. I mean, we could really be in an interesting situation then.
Well, the talk now is that Rupert Lowe will start another political party, and you can just imagine the effect that will have on things, But I'm afraid. Well, we were very disappointed when it came to the general election. That people sided. It seemed to be with very little persuasion or agreement. They seem to side with reform in their thousands. They voted in that direction. But of course, all along we saw through it, didn't we? We could see that these policies that they had, they none of them were pro-life, none of them were pro-family, none of them were the policies that we've stood for and still stand for and will always stand for. Yes, it was, people are so, the cult of personality does seem to be something that folk fall for, isn't it? It really,
it's momentum as well. If people think, that this is the party on the move, this is the one going somewhere, we can be part of this movement, that's sort of, people get caught up in that as well. I mean, if Rupert Lowe did start a new party, maybe with Ben Habib, I don't think they'll join UKIP, but if they did start their own party, I think it could become a problem for reform. But to be honest, I think in a few months' time, this will have blown over, and if they do start a party, it will be relatively low key, I think, maybe, and I think reform wouldn't be hit. It might cost them a few percent in the opinion polls, but I don't see it being catastrophic. I mean, I hope it's catastrophic, but I don't see that. You're indicating you think it could be a bigger deal for them.
I do, yes. I think in politics, when you lose a united front, and people start, I mean, we've seen this with the Tories in the last general election. They got the biggest kicking of their lives, didn't they? They really did. They performed worse than they'd ever performed, and it's because, well, I'm afraid the Tories have almost turned it into an Olympic sport, haven't they? The art of backstabbing. In fact, they do a bit of front stabbing as well as backstabbing as well, and there's just chaos with them. And as soon as people see that, it really puts them on it. I think tonight, right now, maybe not in a few months' time, perhaps you're right, Richard, but tonight, Farage must be pulling his hair out. He must be thinking, we've positioned ourselves to where we are. Look at what's happening. But the cracks, I'm afraid, are yawning. They really are. That article says this as well. There's a danger of letting bright amateurs into politics. And I wonder if that's Paul Farage is trying to control just these 4 MPs that he's got under his wing, and that seems to be difficult. Can you imagine if they had 105 MPs, not just 5?
Yeah,
that would be an absolute firework display, wouldn't it? That would be November the 5th, on steroids. Goodness me.
I think it is. I'm sure there'll be research to back that up, but when you go to the more towards, I don't want to use a pejorative, I don't want to say far right, but more in the rightward direction of the political spectrum. I think in general, the generalization doesn't apply to everyone. In general, you're tending to get people who would tend to be a bit more hard and uncompromising about issues. And I think there can tend to be people who are difficult to manage, difficult to form a team with. They're very ready to dig their heels in and tell someone, say something really hard to. So I think there's always going to be a problem for them. I think the other thing with Rupert Lowe, what he's got on his side is quite a few supporters over on that part of the political spectrum. They're quite taken with conspiracy thinking as well, which may be justified or unjustified on various issues, but they're quite prone to think that way. And so I think what's happened with Rupert Lowe is very much, by a large number of people, it's been seen as, well, this is a setup. This is not a genuine complaint. This is the means of dealing with him. Another way of looking at it, I thought, is if Rupert Lowe knew the complaints were coming, then maybe a smart move is to criticize Farage, and then people will say that the complaints were retaliation. But I think there'll be an awful lot of people who will be happy to think this just shows that Farage is part of the establishment, controlled by who knows what dark, shadowy forces. And Rupert Lowe stood up to these forces manipulating UK politics. So it's a very interesting situation. Will Rupert Lowe be coming to join the family party? No, I don't think he's a social conservative at all. It just seems like harder right than the center of gravity of reform, I would say. I will have to see how that works out. Right, let's have a look at, we've got more on this story. Let's look at the next one. Right, this is a fascinating.
It is.
This is another problem for reform. At the moment as well. I mean, Farage has very much hitched his wagon to the Trump horse. I mean, when he's campaigned for Trump, he's been Trump's mate, he's presented himself with that. He's generally praised Trump. Sometimes he's had to distance himself from him a little bit, and he's done that in quite a subtle way. But he has been willing to do that, to be fair. But I think the overall effect for reform is becoming quite dangerous. And as Trump becomes more and more outrageous, particularly in terms of foreign policy, I think this is a serious, serious danger for Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, if in a sense, he can say what he likes. Even if Nigel Farage said, I was a big supporter of Trump, but looking at the way he's threatening Canada, and let's say he invades Greenland, I mean, who knows, the way he's been pro-Russia, so whatever the reasons might be. So if Farage says, I've realized I made a mistake, the way Trump's acting on the world stage is indefensible, so I'm severing ties with Trump. Even if he did that, people would still think, well, what about your judgment? So you were backing this fella. So I'm not sure there's a way out. And I think this could really cap reform's support. What do you think?
Well, I was sure. Now, this is, again, back to perhaps my political naivety, that as the article in the headline says there, that Farage would enjoy a Trump bump. I thought this would feed into Farage's popularity and give him a shot in the arm. But as you've mentioned there, it certainly hasn't. It's undermined him in many ways. But and what it has done, that this article really highlights quite powerfully across the world, is where Trump, for instance, in Canada, he wants Canada to be the 51st state, really inflammatory stuff. It's given the liberals in Canada, a real leg up, and this has been seen in a number of other places as well. And it's been seen rather annoyingly, even in Starmer. You know, Starmer is the way he's positioned himself is enjoyed a Trump bump. You know, but it's.
I think that the political left and centre across Europe, will benefit.
Right. Yeah, yeah, and it's had that opposite effect with Farage, and it's very. I don't know. Reform is beset now, before and behind now. They before them they have their association with Trump, and wherever he's going to go next, he's going to drag them with it because of their previous friendships with him. And then and behind them, well, within, they've got the way that they're falling apart. You know, even their own MPs. You know, so I'm just fascinated as to the effect that Trump's having across the planet, you know, politically.
Yeah,
it's
my take on Trump is generally most of the things he's doing domestically. I don't follow it that closely. Yeah, pretty good. Like he's really pulling up transgender ideology by the roots. Absolutely brilliant. But his changes to education, brilliant. You know, cutting government waste. Good to a degree. I have to say, from the likes of Elon Musk, I'd quite like to hear sometimes. We do understand that a lot of people are losing their jobs here, and that's going to be very difficult for them. So we do sympathise with that.
Yeah,
but that this we really do think the government you just don't get that faintest hint of that. Not the faintest hint. But there might be someone who say got a job as a cleaner or an IT person in some government organization. So they've got no interest. They're not responsible in any way, shape, or form for the operation or the culture or whatever of that government department, and they're losing their jobs. But from Elon Musk, as I say, you just don't get the faintest hint that that's even a consideration that will cross his mind. But generally speaking, say Trump domestic policy, I agree with a lot of it. Foreign policy, I mean, I like the way he's talking to Canada, like trying to bully Canada. Now, this is where the Trump splainers, I call them, where they'll say, "Oh, it's just a negotiating tactic." I say, no. Let's how about if I come to your house and say, right, I'm going to take over your house and kick you out. It was just a negotiating tactic. It was just to bring you to the table so we could do a deal on whether or not I could park my car in your garage. That doesn't make it okay.
No.
So Trump on the world stage with Canada is just despicable, absolutely despicable. So, and I think as things develop, this is not going to help reform. What might happen? Actually, what might happen is it might get to the point where Farage criticizes Trump to the point where Trump turns on him. Elon Musk is ready to turn him. If Trump were to turn on Farage and say, "Right, this bloke's useless. It's Rupert Lowe," and then you, I don't know, British equivalent to the MAGA party or whatever. That's who you should be supporting. Then, I mean, who knows? Who knows where all that could end?
Yeah. See, this article finishes with this. It's very good the way he's put it. Trump's New World Order has taken a flamethrower to once solid political truths. Up is down, white is black. The most stark new reality is that it is not the left that has struggled to deal with the whirlwind from across the Atlantic. It is the right, so but I'm intrigued what your thoughts are on this question, Richard, before we move on. What have we experienced a Trump bump as in the Scottish Family Party?
No, I don't. I think the potential benefit for us in the future is if reform are partly discredited. I mean, in a sense, I guess that's the hope for us. We've always been very cautious with Trump. We've agreed with things, we've praised things, we've said he's copying our policies in some cases, but we very definitely have never said, well, he's our man. Despite, I mean, some people have pressurized us to do that.
Oh, they have.
They said, "Oh, why are you not just saying we think it's brilliant?" Well, there's lots of reasons why. Just to say something else on this, I think people in Europe, European leaders, what they've been doing for decades is saying, "Oh, evil capitalist America, they don't have welfare systems like we do. They're really bad, imperialists." And because America is more capitalist, more right-wing, it's also richer. It means it can afford a massive military that Europe's benefited from being under the umbrella, the defensive shield of that military. And Trump, quite rightly, has come along and said, well, hang on a minute. We're not having this. We're not spending the money while you're just, instead of spending it on defense, you're spending it on all sorts of things in your own country and criticizing us in the process. So it's quite understandable that Trump said, right, enough's enough.
Enough's enough, yeah.
But what's not understandable is for Trump, particularly like Elon Musk, for example, he said the other day, why should American taxpayers pay for defending Europe? Well, this is not just a matter of money. I mean, the UK came into a coalition with America in the Afghanistan. It's not just a matter of money. It's a matter of being in an alliance of basically the good countries, the countries with good values, the ones that are democracies, that have got freedom for their citizens, etc., and being willing to defend that. But it seems like with the new way of thinking, that counts for nothing. You just look at everything from a totally selfish point of view, which I think is quite disturbing. So again, so Trump had a point. When I heard him saying that, which he's been saying that for years, hasn't he? You know, NATO needs to spend more on defense. It's not fair. You hear that and you think, yeah, that's true. I'm okay with that. You know, you push them on that. But it seems to have gone far, far beyond that now.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Anyway, so we shall see.
We had any comments about this reform debate, reform discussion?
We need a new party. Why do we need a new party when the Scottish Family Party is here? We are a party. We are what we need. We are the solution to these. We've got Mr. Right, Tom. It was nice to meet you. I met you on Saturday, didn't I? So
was this an Aberdonian, Tom?
I think it was in Aberdeen, wasn't it? It wasn't in Dundee, was it? I think it was in Aberdeen. So yeah, Tom, nice to have met you. Right, let's carry on. Right, we've talked about that already. Let's move on from that. Let's miss that one out for now as well. We've just got 10 minutes. Let's look at this one. So this is the headline's slightly misleading here. Kirk where Queen once prayed. In other words, she went to a service there once. So basically, it's Crathy Kirk, isn't it, where the royal family go to church when they're at Balmoral. And it went into a union, which is Church of Scotland speak for putting two churches together so you can close one of them. So the one that went together with it has now closed. And so in a sense, the royal link's pretty tenuous, but it's just about a Church of Scotland closing. I mean, the Church of Scotland webpage, a significant part of it is like an estate agent's selling buildings. But of course, there are lots of faithful Christians in the Church of Scotland.
Yes.
But the big picture is, though, that the decline in the Church of Scotland and in other sort of more liberally minded churches is very, very, very dramatic. Did you see that around you, around your church?
Well, I live in East Kilbride, and I think there's 9. Well, there were 9 Church of Scotland's that's being cut down to 3.
Right.
And I have a very good friendship with one of the Church of Scotland ministers of those 3 that are left. I'm saying that I don't think he's a fully fledged Church of Scotland minister. He should be, because this chap is dynamite. This chap's wonderful. Really, really, really impressive guy. In fact, he's so impressive. He needs to get out the Church of Scotland and start something himself. It would be marvelous. They're definitely holding him back. But of course, the link here with our pro-life, the horror of the whole pro-life and where it all started was 1967. A Church of Scotland elder, David Steele. It was his bill that made its way through Parliament, and here we are today with now 10 million unborn babies aborted.
Yeah. I wonder how that went at the time, because the Church of Scotland, surprisingly, as far as I'm aware, officially is pretty clearly pro-life.
Yes, as far as I know, there was no disciplinary, no, putting him on the naughty step or anything like that. He was allowed to do what he did and continue. As far as I know, I'd love to be enlightened otherwise, but that's what I believe.
I'm sure we would know about it if he was. I don't know what does the Church of Scotland do to people? Does it even have a process? Well, sure, they could remove an elder.
Yeah,
it will remove a member.
It does have a process, but even then, the writing, to use a biblical analogy, was on the wall, and things were declining quite rapidly. And ever since then, they've just been circling the wagons. And I mean, what's a heartbreak is here's obviously a very well-known church. A church. I mean, she only prayed there once, our late Queen, but what is it now? It's been bought by a couple of art dealers. They're nightclubs. They've even been sold to other religions. Which you would think would be almost there'd be something to stop that from happening within the Church of Scotland. The bastion.
I think in England, I think generally the Church of England is very reluctant to sell church buildings for use for other religions. Just to say about that, I mean, if another religion took the same attitude towards Christianity, I would absolutely understand that. I would have no problem. I wouldn't be crying foul at all, because that's just a reflection of their beliefs. If they wouldn't want the building using for something that they regard as contrary to its original purposes, I would quite understand that. The same with the Church of Scotland. I know that there are a lot of faithful Christians and ministers in the Church of Scotland. Wonderful. Very definitely. And the other thing I would say is, I mean, a huge number of church buildings are becoming vacant, but a significant proportion of them, it seems to me, in Edinburgh in any case, are being used by other churches.
Yeah,
there are new churches moving into them in a significant number of cases, not all by a long way, but in a significant number. There are new churches moving in, and that's encouraging. So, anyway, let's move on from that. What else the RAF. Now, the RAF have been in the news before, haven't they, for discriminatory employment practices?
Yes.
But is this the time they're going to wake up?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're right. This has already been proved to be illegal. Taking their recruitment and their diversity, or what do they call it now? Diversity and inclusion recruitment, which is now been proved to be completely discriminatory. But according to this, they've got to the point now where they're running out of pilots, and with the fact that Starmer has shown a willingness in the future to supply a peacekeeping force to the Ukraine, there seems to be a bit of panic in the MOD ranks, the RAF ranks. It does beg a belief, though, that we've got to this point where it's not, well, prior to it being proved to be discriminatory, but we felt that it wasn't. It's not how good a pilot you are. It's your ethnicity that's important.
Yeah.
Oh, I want someone in the skies who's an absolute ace. Who's superb at their job. I don't want someone up there because they were a male or a female, or they're from a certain country or a certain background. You just want the best of the best, don't you?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's quite a concerning indication of the likelihood of war They're so desperate. They're even recruiting white males.
Yeah.
I mean, things must be getting really
Things
bad
must be getting
if they're willing to do that.
Wow. Yes, it must be if they're, and they're even in this article. It also mentions the fact that they're encouraging older candidates who have some level of flight experience to sign up. So they're actually even going back to some of the characters who have been rejected or were considered too old. They're going back to these and hoping that they'll forgive them and come back to the fold, as it were.
Now, this reminds me of, as I'm sure it will all you, I'm sure this is what you'll be thinking of. My speech to the Family Party Conference, I think in 2023, was entitled "Playtime is Over." And I think I would put this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. Playtime is over. And if you're running the RAF, vital part of national defense, and you're running it on the basis of trying to get the right people from the right races and sex or whatever flying your airplanes, if that's what you're focusing on, it's playtime. You're not focused on the really serious job. You don't think you've got a really serious job to do, that the future of the nation depends on it. It's like playtime. We can just we can just mess around with our pet theories or pet causes here. So hopefully the playtime is over message is getting through, and that's going to have some positive effects.
Hopefully.
All right, now here's one that's interesting. This was from the Telegraph. This is from England and Wales: conviction rates for various crimes by nationality. Now, the government, the UK and the Scottish government, are very, very determined to not publish this data. They'll publish how many people of different ethnicities have been stopped and searched by the police. They'll publish all sorts of things where they think people of different minority ethnicities might come out worse. They're very keen to publish that. But when it comes to actually crime rates, this is by nationality, country of origin, they don't like to publish that. But some freedom of information requests, someone has, by some incredible technique, miracle almost, actually managed to extract the information. And the top graph there is for theft, bottom left is violence, bottom right is sexual offences. Look at that top one. So conviction rate per 10,000 people, UK average 18, Algerians 320.
It's unbelievable.
And that's not because, there's only a tiny number of Algerians. I mean, there's a lot of people from Algeria. Morocco, 200. So basically, if you look at the crime statistics, this is a very, very, very significant driver of the level of crime. So, but the reason the government doesn't want to publish these is they fear it will be used. Well, they're partly that they're very left-wing, that they don't want it to be used as a hang on a minute, let's just have a think about immigration and integration. That they also fear it will be used to fuel hostility towards different groups, which would be the sort of Tommy Robinson thing where you just have a sequence of reports about immigrants doing bad things. So if a white person does, or a native Brit does a bad thing, you ignore that, but you just find the foreigners, the immigrants doing bad things, and that just stirs up hostility. It's not very helpful. But the facts are the facts, and then looking at this, it really demands an intelligent, cautious immigration policy. Now, if you keep monitoring this over years and years, and these figures just fade away, or they just all go down to the UK average, I would say that will be an indication that integration has taken place, and maybe even say, maybe time to have a few more people, because we've cracked it with this generation. Things are on track. Things are good. But I don't think anyone could look at this and say everything's just going brilliantly. Anyway, I've said a lot there. What do you think, David?
Well, the headline, you can't see the headline from this picture, but the headline is a quarter of sex crimes carried out by foreigners. So that's very telling indeed, and very worrying. And surely this must feed into the need for the government to get a handle on this. But there's just no government can seem to do it, and
No.
we really are under siege. And these figures are shocking, absolutely shocking, and there seems to be something really wrong with these countries. Really wrong. There's almost there's a normal thing for there to be sexual crimes, for there to be criminal theft happening. They've normalized things that here are the extreme. You know that. I'm just very, very disturbing, and I'm afraid it's very uncomfortable reading as well, because you focus on this for any length of time whatsoever and demand action, you will be called far right. You will be called a racist. You'll be labelled some terrible things that there's plenty of people, when they look at this and they're concerned, they certainly aren't any of those things. They just want a society that's not beset with these kind of figures. You know, it's
But look at those countries. I can't think off the top of my head of anyone I know from any of those countries in Britain. But obviously, as you will, we know loads of people who come from other countries, and salt of the earth. There'll be zero probability they'll be involved in any of these things, not a bit. Obviously, you have to make that clear. But so why is it you've got this? I think, as you were saying, it's the culture of the nation they've come from. Maybe there is a culture
there's something
of
wrong.
Lawlessness. That lawlessness sums it up, doesn't it? And sexual things, right? I mean, mistreatment of women again might be quite normalized or accepted in certain cultures. So that's a big issue. I think another factor is people move to the country and they feel like they're sort of at the bottom of society, which is sort of inevitable. You arrive, you haven't got much money, you don't speak the language. You've got a tough journey ahead, and in that context, I think resentment can build up, where people think, right, this is not fair. I want what all these other people have got. I'm just going to go and steal it. And the other thing I think is a lot of people coming into the country, it's young males, because the extended family sits down and thinks, right, we've got a bit of spare money. So this is rich people in poor countries. They say, we've got a few £1,000 equivalent spare. What's the best investment we can make? And they say, right, the best investment available to us is to get our 18-year-old son into Britain. And then we'll send him there. He can go for 3 years. He can work at a car wash or something. Send us the money home. And then that will transform our life, and we will become rich people, even richer by the standards of our town or village. So that's what it is. So that's why we see these huge numbers of young men coming over. People call them military age men. I think that's unfair, because it's trying to imply that they're on some sort of military mission, but they're not. I mean, they're sent because they're the people that the family chooses to send as the most able and mobile and whatever. But then they arrive here, not knowing anyone, no family support. Things are maybe more difficult than they thought they were going to be. No girlfriends, not the easiest to get a girlfriend if you just got off a boat and don't know anyone, don't speak the language. So you can see that this is a difficult life. People are really putting a lot of obstacles in their own path in choosing to do that. And then I think that's likely to come out in crime. I think if you took people from Britain, if you took like a boatload of 18-year-old boys from Britain and sent them to a country where they couldn't speak the language and just dumped them out and said, right, fend for yourself, try and get somewhere to live, get a job and send some money home, they would find it pretty tough. And they would be sort of a bit in despair and desperate and whatever. I think their crime rate would be massive in that situation.
Yes.
So what we've got to do is not let people in on that basis. A lot of the time they're entering illegally. They know full well it's illegal. And it's not good for the individual coming in, and it's not good for Britain. Which is why we have an immigration system that would say to them, no, you're not coming in. But we've just got to enforce it. It's got to to make it happen.
The final paragraph of this article lays bare something so basic that we could be doing. The Tories said they were proposing amendments to Labour's border security bill. Now listen to this, that would require all foreign nationals convicted of a crime to be deported. So why aren't we doing that already? If you're convicted of a crime, you should be deported. That is we have to have this, not 3 strikes and you're out, 1 strike and you're out. Yeah, as soon as we did that, that would make a huge difference.
Yeah, for serious crimes. Yeah, I mean, if someone drives at 25 miles an hour in a 20 mile an hour, but I think for serious crimes, absolutely, absolutely. That's what I would expect in another country. If I went to live in another country and I committed a serious crime, I would not feel at all surprised or that it was unfair if they said, right, off you go.
Off you go.
We don't want you.
Why can't we do that even? So I don't know. That's there you go.
Right, couple of family party events to mention. It'd be great to see you. 19th of March, Wednesday, Paisley. Having a meeting in Paisley. I haven't had a meeting in Paisley for quite a while.
Liam.
So with our chairman over there, Liam McKechnie, will be in the Weatherspoons there. The last post, we normally get a big table upstairs. Wednesday, 7:30, 19th of March. And also we've got a meeting coming up in Fife on the 3rd of April. That's in our usual venue. That's a few weeks away. Keep your eye open on social media. We're hoping to have a meeting in Dundee and Stirling before too long as well. So keep your eye open for those. Right, David, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, Richard.
This evening.
All mine. Yes.
We haven't done brilliantly bringing comments in, have we? But we've brought 1 or 2 in. So, but thanks for your comments. We've been keeping an eye on those, and thanks for watching, live and later. And we will see you next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night. Good night, David.
Good night.